Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our first webinar in the VGBC series of events about the topic of net zero carbon readiness. Throughout the webinar, we will discuss about the topic of net zero carbon. Will it be the near future and how to prepare and get ready for it? We will have some special guests coming today. First is Ms. Phan Hằng, chairwoman of VGBC, Ms. Joy Esther Guy Chiazzi, Asia Pacific Programs Head from WorldGBC, Mr. Kerry Chan, Executive Director of Hong Kong GBC, and the Chair of Asia Pacific Regional Network. Ms. Mai Phương Luong, Team Lead, Large Local Corporate South and CR from HSBC Vietnam. Mr. Tim Middleton, Sustainable Design Specialist from VGBC, and our moderator, Mr. Henry Zung, Executive Director of VGBC. They will participate and share the ideas about today's topic about clean energy, carbon emission reduction, and green finance. So before we start the webinar, I would like to make an announcement about some protocols and small rules that we will have today in order to make the event go smoothly. So first of all of the participants must have to mute their microphones and turn off their cameras, except for our guest speaker. You should always turn on your cameras. If you guys have some questions or wondering about anything during the presentations of our guest speakers, please save it until the panel discussion to ask by pressing the raise hand button in Zoom or simply type it in the chat box. Thank you very much. And now, without waiting any longer, I would like to introduce Ms. Phan Hằng, the chairwoman of VGBC. Ms. Phan Hằng has over 15 years experience in building science, acoustics, fire, thermal, environmental, and sustainability solutions in construction sector. Her first major is in architecture before extending to the scope to building management and material, and has been the chair of Vietnam Green Building Council since 2018, responsible for the VGBC board of directors to formulate strategic directions of the council to drive the green building agenda for Vietnam. Pursuing her personal calling to help people grow, she is also certified coach and trainer specialized in career leadership coaching, building resilience to adapt to change, and especially sustainability coaching, helping clients to gain insight and reflect mindfully on their core values to make conscious choice for a new lifestyle in harmony with nature. And now she will have some words with us today to start the webinar. Please, Ms. Hằng.
Thank you for the introduction. And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is our pleasure today to welcome you to our webinar. Vietnam Green Building Council, we are an official members of WorldGBC, and we are very proud to host this net zero carbon series of events alongside with GBC. We are truly honored by the participants of our regional speakers, Mr. Kerry Chan, Chair of GBC, and Ms. Joy Gay, Program Head from WorldGBC. We are grateful for your time, energy, and insight you have committed to this work. And to kick off today's discussion, I would like to touch briefly on to the subject from the WorldGBC net zero carbon commitment. WorldGBC advocates for halving emissions of the building and construction sector by 2030 and the total decarbonization of the sector by 2050. The commitment requires that by 2030, existing buildings reduce their energy consumption and eliminate emissions from energy and removing fossil fuel use as fast as practicable. For the new development and major renovations are built to be highly efficient, powered by renewable, with a maximum reduction of embodied carbon and compensation of all the upfront emissions. And this commitment consider the whole life cycle impact of a building and builds on VGBC, WorldGBC whole life carbon vision and best practice principle for implementation. And this requires a deep collaboration across the entire value chain, a radical transformation in the way the buildings are designed, built, occupied, and deconstructed. And I'm glad that today we are here to discuss this commitment together across the whole value chain in construction business. Thank you. Now I think it's over to Joy Gay to introduce our net zero carbon readiness framework. Over to you.
Thank you, Han. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for spending your Saturday with all of us. We're here to prepare for the journey of advancing net zero in Vietnam. So my name is Joy Gay. I'm based in Singapore, the Asia Pacific Programs Head from World Green Building Council. I'm also the founder of Joy of Sustainability, specializing sustainability engineering consultancy and positive psychology. So Ms. Han is the only person I know in this industry who is also a coach. So I really hope that she will bring her positive energy and vibe into the Vietnam Green Building Council and eventually the market in Vietnam as well. So as we are actually not too far away after this conclusion of the COP26, so because now people are still reflecting and discussing about what are the takeaways, what are the learning points, and what are the action steps moving forward. So I'm really sure that this is today where we are having now is indeed a very critical step now that we are reflecting what should we do after the COP26 and what should we emphasize and bring over to Vietnam Green Building Council to continue this advancing of net zero. So again, when leaders are stepping forward to commit on the global goal, we also need ourselves to ground these visions and goals into the solid and concrete plan and develop framework to be implemented in the industry. So this is what we're going to begin with, that World Green Building Council will be collaborating with Vietnam Green Building Council very closely from next year to advance the net zero adventure. So you can see from the screen that in 2018, that World Green Building Council has launched this whole life carbon vision. I think some of you, like your company, may already step forward to be the commitment signatory with this World Green Building Council advancing net zero program. So actually the global movement of this whole life carbon started much earlier than this. And then after the World Green Building Council launched this whole life carbon vision, indeed, it was a difficult experience for everyone, that because we are requiring the companies to step forward, commit net zero, especially in the operational carbon by 2030. So again, but we are very thrilled to really receive a lot of positive feedback. And we also see that companies are stepping forward to put net zero as their vision, their internal and external commitment, and ultimately becoming their company strategy plan. So this is what we already achieved a long time ago. And we always know that the scientists also told us that this is not enough. So that's why you will see in the next slide. This year, around September, the next slide, please. So this year in September, World Green Building Council published an enhanced commitment pathway by expanding its scope to recognize this enhanced leadership action in tackling both the operational carbon and the embodied carbon emission from the building and the construction sector. So in this new commitment signatory, we are requesting the leading company to committing in both operational carbon and embodied carbon as well. So adding another layer of challenge into this industry. We're also emphasizing that having the offset, the carbon offset, only as the last resort. So you may actually take a moment to scan this QR code, and there is also a link to link to more information so you can consider that whether your company is ready or your company is considering in doing this pledge and be part of this global movement. Because by committing in this commitment signatory, your organization will also be recognized as the front runner under the global movement right after the COP26. So there are a lot of recognition, and at the same time, you will be exposed to all the global resources to guide you through that, how to achieve the net zero and how are we able to support you further. So in the next slide, we will see some of the interesting numbers. So I'm actually very sure that after today's webinar, this number will start to grow. Next slide, please. So in the 2022 onwards, you can see that by now we already have 28 green building councils participating in this advancing of net zero energy program. We hope that after today, Vietnam Green Building Council will be one of this as well. And there, so far we have 156 commitment signatures. I think the number is already running higher than this, and we hope that there will be more companies from Vietnam to be the leader of your industry, to show us what can be done and what needs to be done as well. So again, World Green Building Council, beyond going through all these commitment signatures, we're also here to support everyone in doing so. So that's why today's webinar, we're partnering with the Vietnam Green Building Council to introduce this new product, which is the Net Zero Readiness Framework. So let's meet this Net Zero Readiness Framework. Please have the next slide. I'm feeling I'm launching an iPhone product here. So let's meet Net Zero Readiness Framework. So this framework will be live on the World Green Building Council website soon. Right now, we are still revamping our new website. You will be in our old website for the framework, and we will be transferring to the new website around the first quarter of next year. So the framework covers 5 main categories. That next slide, please. And you will see that the 5 main categories covers government leadership, technical solutions and approaches, finance, data, and mindset. So I believe that this should be the most comprehensive framework covering from policy to solutions and even to the positive psychology. And there are almost all the aspects that may influence the advancing of net zero. So next slide. So under these 5 categories, we also further unfold into more performance goals. So it will break it down and expand to more specific targets. So this framework will also further unfold. Maybe you can click one more time. There will be, the framework will also further unfold these performance goals into more performance indicators. So there are also clearer and more measurable explanations and expectations that's supporting all this framework. So what you are looking at is a holistic framework covering nearly all aspects we know so far about advancing net zero. At the same time, supporting your understanding with case studies, solutions, and publications in the region. So in this way that we're closing the knowledge gap and also to help the market build the confidence. In the next slide. So the framework will be hosted on our website, as I mentioned, and we will also put the case studies from our support and our partners also, so that if your organization is considering, for example, to take the net zero commitment, or if you are doing a net zero energy project, you can actually access to a full load of info relating to advancing net zero. And you can use this one to formulate your own strategy and roadmaps accordingly. So to further verify the framework to align with the market need and expectation, we also conducted several surveys and also the workshop like today. Before this, we already have with Singapore, Hong Kong, India, the Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, and here we are, the Vietnam Green Building Council. And next year, we also planned more with Pakistan, with China, and with Japan or Korea. So we also wanted to see more feedback and response about this readiness framework. So I put in the chat here that you can always go to the survey form to put up your indication and your info inputs into the survey form to represent the Vietnam stand as well. So in the next slide, we also wanted to take today's opportunity to share with you how are we processing the data? How are we taking your opinion into the development of this framework? So again, in order to further validate this framework, we're conducting this market survey research and also the workshop like what we have now. So, so the survey form actually asks all the participants to rate the performance goals according to how important it is to the industry and how likely this will be implemented in the industry. So you can actually head down to this survey. It will take you a while, but the data will be super important and useful for our market. So you can see that there are 4 quadrants in this survey results. We will be plotting your number into these 4 phases. If the survey number shows at the green zone, which means what are you waiting for? It's most important and most likely. This is definitely the high priority that your industry, your market need to be done. If your results shows at the gap, which is the blue zone, which means that it's highly important, but somehow less likely. So we'll definitely invite the industry to reflect and think about what is really the challenge and the gap that we can identify, and eventually will be a breakthrough for us to advance the net zero. If the result shows in the yellow zone, which means that it's less important, but more likely, which means that we can put into the lower priority because it's not something so super urgent. And again, if you fall in the red zone, means it's not relevant, we will definitely advise you may not need to consider this. Fortunately, all of the results we saw so far are fall into either the blue zone and action zone, some of them in the lower priority, but very rare. So usually it's in the blue and green zone. So later we'll show you how the result shows in your market, and we'll also compare across what other countries are taking these results and how are we taking forward from here. So in the next slide, you can also take the time to scan this QR code. It will bring you into the raw data form, showcasing all the workshop and survey data we have collected so far. So I took a little moment to translate your input, and please put in more because this is a live board that we'll keep updating. So next year you will see this getting longer and longer. So again, in the next slides, we have enlarged the results from the Vietnam Green Building Council. One more slide, please. So you can see that it's not meant for you to read in detail, but you can definitely hop into this link. I will just put the mirror board into the chat group, chat link again. So you can zoom in and zoom out and have fun in the mirror link to see all the raw data and what has been put down as a challenge. So in order to give you a summary of what we are taking away from these results in the next slide, you will see that coincidentally or very interestingly, we see such a great commonality between all these green building councils across the Asia Pacific region so far. So in Vietnam, we have put in the top 3 priority. First of all, in the technical category, energy performance improvement strategy is one of the top rated goal in Vietnam. And also every single green building council actually rated clearly agreed definition of net zero as one of their top priority as well. To our surprise, yes, there are indeed a lot of different variations of the net zero definition. For us to have our Asia Pacific version of net zero definition seems more crucial for us to focus on next year. And also in Vietnam, we also talk about the guidelines for net zero project verification. So something I think our Green Building Council together with the World Green Building Council can expand a little bit more in the next year for these top 3 goals. So in the next slide, we also help you to summarize what are in the blue zone, which we call most important and less likely. So you can see that everyone also look at national grid decarbonization plan and ready availability of clean energy options to industry, which means that although Asia Pacific region, our build industry is growing heavily, our construction area is really tremendously the highest in the world. And our biggest gap and biggest challenge is we don't have enough access to the renewable energy supply. This is the most painful thing in Singapore and Hong Kong. Eventually, I think it across the entire Asia Pacific region. So if you are starting a business, if your business is in the renewable energy, big congratulations to you that this is the biggest gap we need to close in the coming year. And also there's also another gap we're looking at is to have the mandatory regulations performance requirement relating to achieve of net zero. And another one is relating to data, which is referring to the transparency of data to promote accountability and trust. So these are the challenges and gaps that we wanted to expand a little bit more and to help the industry understand and overcome later. So in the next slide, we also summarize some top to-do lists and some key challenges. So what we are summarizing of everyone's challenge statement. So there is a part under the green zone in the mirror board. We also listed what other challenges has reflected in the experts that we invited to take the survey. So there are 4 main whole life carbon challenges: upfront costs, finance. Today we have a HSBC to share with us about the financial program. I'm sure this is way more than way more than what she can share within that 15 minutes. But we will definitely want to engage closely with the banks and financial institute to learn more and help each other to really bring the upfront cost low, to lower the green premium, so that it's much easier for us to take on the advancing of net zero. They also talk about lack of appealing business model. How can we use coaching model, positive psychology, to really help the industry get a more appealing and positive coach like business model in the advancing net zero? There's a lot of things for Han to do. I would definitely more interested to support it as well. So that's why this leads to the mindset and behavior change that everyone needs to have a different perception in moving forward. Also, again, everyone pointing to the accessibility to renewable energy, carbon offset resources that we also wanted to partner with the business as well. If your company is interested to step forward, we are more than welcome to have the collaboration with you. So the top to-do list: net zero benchmarking and target setting tool, national carbon emission target and roadmap, and have a clear definition of net zero. So this is something like in our top agenda. So in the next slides, you will slowly to see that our World Green Building Council will build this readiness framework and to open up more detail and more module to the industry, that we also welcome the contribution from your industry as well. So in the next slide, we will have some phases. We will start, we already use the Hong Kong, borrow the platform of Hong Kong International Conference in Net Zero this November to officially launch this readiness framework. Moving forward, every quarter, we will have new module to unveil, and we will also bring more content into this readiness framework. So with this, I'm concluding for today, and I'm definitely inviting you in the next slide to pay attention to our upcoming event. So the official website launch, and you will see this by around January or the first quarter of next year. And next in 2022, it will be also our World Green Building Council's 20th anniversary. And we also wanted to echo this anniversary and to bring in this APN 2022 festival events from June all the way to November. And next year is also our biannual APN award, so that we're also looking forward to have project nomination, business, and also the leadership coming from Vietnam market as well. So with this, I'm handing over the stage to our APN chair, Mr. Kerry Chan. He's also the CEO of Hong Kong Green Building Council, to walk you through more about this readiness framework. Mr. Kerry is also a very influential person in our Asia Pacific network. He's also the brain, DNA, the master, and also the main contributor behind this readiness framework. Dr. Kerry, please.
Thank you. Before Mr. Kerry Chan speak, I would like to give you guys some information about him. I will introduce him a little bit for you guys. Mr. Kerry Chan, Executive Director of Hong Kong GBC, and he's also the chair of Asia Pacific Regional Network, will be our second guest speaker today. Dr. Kerry Chan is a professional engineer and has been the Executive Director of Hong Kong Green Building Council since 2016. Before joining the Hong Kong GBC, Kerry had over 30 years in the commercial sector, with his last tenure at the Swire Properties Limited as General Manager, Technical Services and Sustainability. He has won international awards for his work, including Client of the Year, Low Carbon Operation Award by the Chatter Institution of Building Services Engineers in 2010. In terms of green building movement, Kerry played a key role in establishing the Hong Kong theme, the earlier version of Hong Kong green building rating tool back in 1995. As for other engagement, Kerry was a key person in establishing the Memorandum of Collaboration to promote retro commissioning in the Greater Bay Area, together with the government of Hong Kong SAR and 5 other major organizations, including the Tsinghua University in 2018. And now please welcome Mr. Kerry Chan.
Thank you very much for the very generous introduction, and thank you for having me here in this very important event. Well, before I started, I would like to say how impressive I am with the progress of VGBC. In Hong Kong, we launched the first green building assessment tool back in 1996, and it took us 13 years, 13 years to establish the Hong Kong Green Building Council, and also took us maybe 2 to 3 years, well, before we can get to be a member of the World Green Building Council. So I'm very impressed with the progress that VGBC has made in this few years. Very, very impressive. So next slide, please. Yeah, I would talk a little bit about how Hong Kong is applying for this readiness framework. Next slide. Before I do that, I would just like to talk about a little bit about the impact area of the World Green Building Council. The World Green Building Council has, well, based on the UN SDG, has focused on 3 impact areas. First is climate action, and then health and well-being, and resources and circulations. And our impact pathway is by various means: collaborating with different partners, different GBCs, governments, etc., advocacy, rating systems, communications, education, innovation, and investment. So these are the impact pathways. Next slide, please. So this is what keeps me awake at night. I think it is more or less the same with everyone else in the industry. It's just so many things coming up every day, every month, and it's really impossible for us to, well, get into the details of this and even understand what that is. So what keeps me awake is, well, I'm asking, well, am I missing something? Well, I cannot stay on top of all these things. Am I responsible for all of these? What are others doing, and who is doing that? Who's doing what? And do I have the resources to tackle all of these? Well, what should be my priorities? What will be coming tomorrow? So these are really haunting most of us, nearly all the persons that I've talked to. Next slide. So therefore, it's very important for us to, first of all, put it into different drawers. Well, that is what we are trying to build, is the readiness framework, which is a set of drawers. Well, it contains about 5 categories, 25 goals, 75 indicators, which Joy has already explained in her presentation. So next slide. So Hong Kong in September, just in September, has announced its roadmap to carbon neutrality. So what the boxes there is the essence inside this carbon roadmap for Hong Kong. First is a steering and coordination, and they will set up steering committees by the government, and also is chaired by the chief executive, which is the top government officials. They will set up a separate office for climate change and carbon neutrality. So this is the structure of the organization, pushing towards the carbon neutrality in Hong Kong. And then supporting it is the green finance, building up a green economy, and also have put in the money. Climate budget for that is 240 billion Hong Kong dollars, which is quite a lot of money for the coming 15 to 20 years. Then is the regarding the industry is public engagement, setting up advisory committees, carbon neutral communities, and also capacity building for the industry, which is extremely important, because if there's not enough capacity for the industry professionals, there's no way that we can move forward. And then very important as well is the technology and innovation. So this is really the main themes on this Hong Kong's roadmap to carbon neutrality. Next slide, please. So this is how we try to apply the readiness framework. So in Hong Kong, we have the climate action plan already, which is by the government. The government has set up strategies, targets, medium and short term, and the supply side and the demand side as well. So if you look at the framework on government leadership, so we think we satisfy 1, 2, 3, and 4. But however, we are not there yet on the availability and access to a local carbon market. In Hong Kong, we do not yet have a carbon trading system. We do not produce a lot of carbon credits in Hong Kong. So this is something that Hong Kong can consider whether we should have a carbon market or not. And if yes, what is really the priorities that we should take to having a local carbon market in Hong Kong. So this is how we use try to use this framework. Next slide, please. Now, regarding technical solutions and approach, so we look at the government. The government has pushed retro-commissioning as a major means of their carbon action plan. And then they have issued a deepening energy saving in existing buildings strategy, what they call is a 4T strategies. They try to engage the key energy consumers in Hong Kong to ask them to make the 4T commitment, which is this: they will set a target, set a timeline, transparency of information, and also working together. So this is a government initiatives to draw the big spenders together. And then they are holding competitions for retro-commissioning and energy savings. And they are working with the two power companies to go for zero carbon supply side energy electricity generation. And they have EPD have a green procurement specification as well. So if I try to match it with the 8 goals on technical solutions and approaches, well, we found that we are still lagging behind on goal 6 and 7, which is having an embodied carbon benchmarking system, and also the availability of net zero certification system. So actually, having this gap that we have identified, that we are now trying to go for building up a framework for embodied carbon benchmarking system as well. And also we are in the progress of setting up a net zero certification scheme as well. So next slide, please. So again, on technical solutions and approaches. So this is what Hong Kong Green Council is doing. We have launched our commitment on bringing the industry towards carbon neutrality. So we have already done that, and we have also have a lot of initiatives. We have asked a lot of key stakeholders in the industry to commit for carbon neutrality, and we have an workshop system, which is a workshop system that can that we are using, living buildings, real buildings as living laboratories to test out methodologies in how to tune the building to its maximum efficiency. And we have just finished an ideas competition where we try to get all the right ideas from the industry, from the professionals. And we have a CIC green building certification where we certified low carbon products and also other green building products as well. So with that, we think we still have a gap on having an embodied carbon benchmarking and availability of net zero certification scheme, even though we took into account what the government is doing and what Hong Kong Green Building Council is doing. So next slide, please. So next slide is on finance. On the finance side, the government has partnered with the two power companies to set up fundings to facilitate buildings, to retrofit the buildings. And they have a smart power fund. And they have also other funding as well. For example, the Green Tech Fund, which is to fund technologies that can contribute to low carbon technologies. And there are countless funding that Hong Kong organizations can apply for. So on that, we have two gaps. One is the guidelines on project budgeting and planning for net zero. We are not really starting on that yet. And also guidelines for net zero project verification. So this is something, the goal for this is something that Hong Kong Green Council is trying to work on. Next slide, please. So this is on data. Regarding data, I think we have quite a lot of data from the government. The EMSD, which is the Electrical and Mechanical Services Department, they have a lot of data in terms of energy efficiency for buildings, for different types of buildings, from residential buildings, commercial buildings, and transport system as well. So we have a quite comprehensive database. Next slide, please. And for Hong Kong Green Building Council, we have also got a very comprehensive database for office building, retail, and also hotels for the energy intensity of these kind of buildings. So on the data, generally, we are quite happy that we have quite a lot of data in Hong Kong. Of course, it's never enough. It's really up to the government and the Hong Kong Green Building Council to update our database periodically. Thank you. Next slide, please. Regarding mindset, the Hong Kong Green Building Council has done a lot in creating the right mindset for advancing net zero. Recently, we have an ideas competition that I've talked about, which we have 60 organizations joined into 22 teams to compete for this competition. So we now got nearly all the solutions that the experts in Hong Kong has already, that the expertise in Hong Kong can think about is all now in our database, which we are about to share with the industry, both locally and also other parts of the world. And we have just finished Advancing Net Zero International Conference. We have about 38 regions and countries participating in this conference, which is a very successful one. And we have Hong Kong Green Building Week, which is also a WorldGBC's initiative as well. We have a Advancing Net Zero webinar series is on the YouTube, which everyone can log in to watch it. And we have a retro commissioning training and retrofitting scheme to drive for building energy efficiency. So on that, I think we have done a bit of everything on these 5 goals on mindset by Hong Kong Green Building Council. Next slide, please. So that is all I have to share for today. So thank you very much, and I will pass it back to the MC. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kerchan, for such an amazing speech about how Hong Kong GBC has aligned with the net zero carbon readiness and how dedicated you are. And now I would like to introduce to you again, Ms. Fan. She will be on stage again to discuss with us about energy, carbon in buildings, and show us the roadmap to carbon emission reduction in the sector. Yes, please, Ms. Fan.
Can you hear me well? It should be okay, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So thank you very much, Joy Gay, for the overall picture of the framework. And yeah, it's very good framework to start with, and I'm very impressed with what Hong Kong GBC have done according to this framework. So we are trying, yeah, there's a very good practice for us. So in my presentation, I would like to share a bit about the technical part of it, the roadmap, how to achieve the carbon emission reduction in our building sector. Next slide, please. So to start with, just a little bit introduction about Vietnam GBC. We are the official member of WorldGBC, and we have been developing the Lotus green rating tool for Vietnam since 2010. And today, Lotus now cover almost all building types and project types, including new construction, major renovation, buildings in operations, single dwelling homes, and including the interior fitting out projects. Next slide, please. So back to the topic of the net zero carbons, you can see on the left-hand side, the climate change report, the latest climate change report of IPCC in 2021. So according to this latest report, to achieve the global warming limit of 1.5 C degree above the pre-industrial level, we will need to cut down our carbon emission by half by 2030 and continue on the progress to limit the carbon emission within the budget of 400 gigatons. So the carbon emission budget that remaining for us is 400 gigatons. Next, please. And currently, our annual emission is around 40 gigatons, which means to limit the carbon emission within the 400 gigatons remaining budget, we need to have a 50% reduction by 2030 and continue on the progress to reach the 400 gigatons by 2040. And by doing so, we will have the 67% of the likelihood, only 67% of the probability of meeting the 1.5 C degree. Of course, if we can do better than that, if we can limit the carbon budget to 300 gigatons, then we will have high chance, 83% of our likelihood to meet the 1.5 C degree target. Next, please. So within this global picture, our construction sector contribution here comes from two parts. The building operations, which are responsible for about 28% of the annual budget of the annual carbon emissions, while the building material and construction typically referred to as embodied carbon, which come from the manufacturing and processing of our building materials and construction, contribute up to 11%. So the total 28 plus 11%, we contribute close to 40% of the annual global CO2 emission. And therefore, the WorldGBC participating in the advancing net zero projects dedicated to support the market transformation toward the sector decarbonization, which means significant reduction in energy and efficient in an emission in both part operational and embodied carbon. Next, please. As mentioned earlier, the whole life carbon is described as operational and embodied carbon, and for buildings sector to play a major role in supporting the decarbonization, we need to address the whole life cycle impact of a building. And whole life net zero carbon emission buildings, and therefore the building whose carbon emission from the material used or embodied carbon, and as well as the operational carbon emissions are offsets. So what action in particular can we do to offset these emissions? I will discuss in the next slide. So for the operational stage, which responsible for 2/3 of the sector emissions, the definition of net zero implies a strong effort to increase the energy efficiency first. And energy efficiency is the core driver to reduce the operational emission. And strategy to enhance the energy efficiency optimizing the building thermal envelope so that the heating and cooling energy can be reduced. This including the deep renovation for the existing building, like adding more insulation to reduce the energy consumption, or for new building to start with the design consideration for better design. Secondly, electrification, which means no fossil fuel on site. It's not only climate friendly, but it also healthier for occupants, safer and cheaper. And thirdly, renewable energy, switching to renewable energy. So such as solar or wind energy. And in case of Vietnam, quite interestingly, in 2017, solar energy played almost no part in Vietnam energy strategy. But by the end of 2019, Vietnam has surpassed Malaysia and Thailand to reach the largest installed capacity of solar panels in Southeast Asia. And after the commitment of our Prime Minister at the COP26, we are seeing the race to the wind energy starting to pick up. So hopefully, we will have more supply of renewable resources in the future. For the second part, the material or embodied carbon strategy can be applied, such as choosing low carbon materials, use more efficient manufacturing techniques, optimization of material use, or by using recycling to reduce the quantity of virgin material, not only address the circularity change, but also by doing so, we reduce the embodied carbon. And indeed, material efficiency can reduce the whole life emissions of the residential building by up to 35 to 40%. So when we act on the whole life cycle of a building in 2 dimensions of operational carbons and embodied carbon, we could have us to achieve the full decarbonization of the sector. And of course, to do so, we need to start with the transparency of data collection, increase the data collection, disclosure of building performance, and then gradually apply the using of building labels and standard. Next, please. So for the different type of building, there are several group of action that are recommended for the existing building in order to reduce the operational carbon emission. Renovation is a key, critical. So like I mentioned earlier, we need to enhance the building envelope, and thermal insulation will be crucial. Prioritize the preserve or extend the lifetime by ensuring the improved repair and refurbishment. And thirdly, increase the intensity of use of the building, which means increase the occupancies or the utilization rate. We can see that there's already emerging chance of sharing economy, like share office or Airbnb, which are developing into this direction. One click, please. One click. Yeah, for the new building, we can start with setting the minimal energy efficiency and thermal performance requirement. And in Vietnam, actually, we already have QCVN 09 stipulates the requirement for energy efficiency of the building, encouraging building to perform better than the baseline. And for new building, we can start with design consideration to better design with facade orientation, natural ventilation, green roof, etc. So different active design scheme to reduce the heating and cooling energy. And thirdly, implement the circularity. So like I mentioned earlier, using reuse and use recycled material not only reduce the virgin material, but also reduce the embodied carbon of the material. Yeah, so we see here the strong link between the two chains, the carbon emission and circularity. But actually to do so, a holistic approach from the early stage is important, with the mindset from the design state, design to deconstruct, to dismantle, so that if we can do so, one click please. If we can do so at the deconstruction state, we can see that waste becoming the secondary resources. Circularity become a business model, and waste recycling service can be a business opportunity. And this model will require the consideration from the design stage, design to design to deconstruct, or dismantle for reuse. So these are the group of action we recommended for each type of the building state. Next, please. To talk about the legal framework, so I want to share here in Vietnam we have already existing legal framework, already integrated energy efficiency aspect and ready for further improve. In March 2021, our Prime Minister have issued the decision stipulates the requirements for energy efficiency buildings. And from June 2021, Ministry of Construction has issued the revised construction law in which encourage the building operates in energy efficiency mode, and introduce also the energy efficient rating for building operation. As you can see here, this rating system is really on par with the European countries. So I'm very happy to see this movement from the government. Next, please. And because we are talking about the government legal framework and activities, I want to share the updated result of the projects energy efficiency improvement in commercial and high-rise residential buildings in Vietnam. So this project executing partner is the Ministry of Construction and sponsored by UNDP. This project have a duration for from 2016 to 2021, so just finished last year. In the context that the electricity consumption of residential and commercial and public services sector represented more than 42% of the total energy in 2019. So the finding from this project, they compare the energy saving of the proposed cases versus the QCVN the compliant case, and we see the saving from 21 up to 37%, which is very impressive, and estimated extra cost from 0 to 5% only. So it's very impressive result. That drive the payback time is only 3.7 years on average. So it's a very encouraging result. But through this project, they also finding still limited enforcement of QCVN 09. So although we already have QCVN 09 as a mandatory requirement, but the enforcement is still quite weak. And the project showed the enormous energy reduction potential in high-rise building. However, parties involved in the design and operation of the project, especially the investor, they are not consider, they do not fully understand the cost and benefit of the energy efficiency projects. And most developers still consider design costs are to be considered like a commodity and no interest to invest into good and energy efficiency design. And the finding also show lack of prerequisite that input for the development of building energy efficiency in Vietnam. This can be addressed by the local green building scheme, as in my next slide. So as introduced earlier, Lotus is the voluntary green building scheme for Vietnam, developed by VGBC, and Lotus has 8 categories, in which energy category accounted for 32 points, or 32% of total score. And our approach very much focused on energy efficiency, which require the projects must comply with all mandatory requirements included in QCVN09. And Lotus is also the only green scheme in Vietnam that integrated deeply with the Vietnam building regulations. And the prerequisite for the Lotus projects are including measure total building energy use, design of the building through passive design, to demonstrate the energy efficiency of minimum 10% improvement from the baseline. And from there, additional 1 point for every 2.5% reduction of energy use from the baseline, up to 45% improvement, which can gain total 14 points. And beside that, there's an additional point for other credit like building envelope, ventilations and air conditioning and interior lighting, etc. Last but not least, is point for renewable energy, up to 3 points. So we can see very clearly that the point system in Lotus energy credit cover all 3 key actions in operational carbon, which are energy efficiency, electrification, and renewable energy. Next, please. So talk about material and embodied carbon. The material and resource category of Lotus includes 3 main goals, which first is to reduce the amount of virgin natural resources. Second is to promote the use of a low embodied material. And third is to reduce the amount of waste generated. And to achieve these goals, credit within this category encourage the reuse, recycle of building material from sustainable sources, and unbaked material. So for example, Vietnam has a regulation to use the lightweight material to replace burnt brick. Yeah. Next, please. So here is a case study of environmental impact of one Lotus platinum project. This is the Green One UN house. This project has 77% of landscape area that limits the heat island effect, 35% of total green roof. And beside the choice of MEP system, those features, design feature, contribute up to the reduction of 29% of energy use for the building. And beside that, for the embodied carbon, they use 94% of the existing structure is reused material to reduce the embodied carbon. Per year, sorry. Okay, so next slide. So to summarize, to achieve the global warming limit of 1.5 degree above the pre-industrial level, we will need to cut down our carbon emissions by half by 2030 and continue on the progress to maintain our carbon emission budget within the limit of 400 gigatons. And in this global picture, our building sector contribute close to 40% emission that come from two parts, the embodied and operational carbon. And we need to address the whole life cycle impact of a building to address the decarbonization target. And there are three groups of actions that allow us to do so, which are energy efficiency, electrification, and renewable energy, in which energy efficiency is the starting point and can save up to 37% of energy use. And Vietnam already have the regulation mandatory in this regard. And applying green building scheme like Lotus will help all stakeholders from the early design stage to consider right strategy from the beginning and have the holistic approach to decarbonize their building. Next slide, please. So that's it from me, and please join us in creating green buildings for everyone. Everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Han, again. So move on to our next speakers. I would like to introduce to you Mr. Tim Middleton, Sustainable Design Specialist from VGBC. Tim is an environmentally sustainable design specialist from Australia. Tim graduated with a master's in architecture from the University of Sydney. Tim came to Vietnam as a technical expert to develop the Lotus Green Building Rating Tools with the Vietnam Green Building Council. Since coming to Vietnam, he has continued to awareness raising and in technical advisory capacity for VGBC and serves on the VGBC Board of Directors. And now Mr. Tim is here to talk about a real life case about carbon emission reduction through whole life cycle in Lotus Building. Please, Mr. Tim.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and I want to thank the VGBC and our sponsors, supporters, and our distinguished guests for this great webinar today and the chance to talk about this topic, which for me is quite exciting. So I think that carbon emission through the whole life cycle may sound for some people like something that we need to do for the future when we have more technology and more access to renewables, but what I hope today is that I can show you that how we can use the tools that we have even now in Vietnam to get on the net zero carbon roadmap and start moving towards our net zero goals. We heard about the urgency to act on climate change during COP26 in Glasgow. And I think it's clear that we can't just rely on governments only to get us to a net zero future. We really need cross-sector collaboration, and I think that in the building sector, we are well placed to start to take on this challenge through the efforts of governments and investors, building professionals, and especially through the efforts of our green building councils. So today I want to have a look in a little bit more detail, as Ms. Hang presented about Lotus, about how Lotus can be a framework and a guide for looking at decarbonizing our building sector in Vietnam. So next slide, please. Thank you for quite a detailed introduction, so I don't think I need to say any more about that. This is our project in the Step House in Vinh Nhân, but we can go to the next slide, I think. So starting off, Hang also mentioned about the contribution of buildings to global CO2 emissions, but I just wanted to mention that green building is not only about decarbonization. So decarbonization fits into the goal of reducing impacts from resource consumption, but also green building is about interior environmental quality and how buildings interact and impact on the surrounding environment. So while we will be focusing on resource consumption, it's important to note, and Mr. Carrie Chen also mentioned this, that there are other goals that we need to balance in the building sector for green building as we embark on this journey. So next slide, please. And today, Ms. Hang also mentioned about the various types of building that Lotus can apply to. So we are focusing on new construction in particular now, but yeah, I just wanted to point out that for interior projects and buildings in operation as well, Lotus has tools and to assess the how green these types of projects are, existing buildings and interiors. And these are also important parts of the decarbonization goal, but today we'll focus on new construction. Next slide, please. Yeah, and this is similar to what Ms. Hang said, but energy is the most point-heavy category and most important category in Lotus at this stage. And I want to show you how we look at energy and materials and resources in a Lotus project. So next slide, please. And Lotus also has an exceptional performance category, which also allows for innovative ideas and strategies to be applied to projects which may be not well known yet. And yeah, it's also open to giving points for that. Next slide, please. Okay, so I want to have a look at 4 main tools that we have available already and that Lotus encourages us to look at as we approach a building project and in making it green. And these we can apply in Vietnam already, and I think Lotus is a good way to be guided through the process to decarbonize a project by using tools such as this. So the first is integrated design. And integrated design is about getting together all parties from the project team early on in the design stage. And this may seem like an obvious approach, but quite often, too often in building projects, the project is very much run by one party and doesn't benefit from synergies by getting different professionals and stakeholders in the project to sit down to share the same goals about sustainability and to look at how they can work together to achieve those goals in terms of building performance and other green building goals as well. So this is a process that can really bring significant benefits through a design process in achieving green building. Secondly is what I would call the hierarchy of effort. And this also follows somehow the decarbonization process as well. So when approaching a project and when looking through the Lotus energy category, the list of energy credits in Lotus will kind of guide you through this hierarchy of effort, starting off with E1, which is passive design. And yeah, the first part of green building process will be to reduce the demand. So trying to lower the demand for energy, water, and materials. For example, by looking early on in the design stage at the orientation, shading, zoning, such things that may not impact the cost of the project, but can really lead to significant performance improvements of the building. The second step would be to optimize efficiency by complementing the passive design and reduction in demand by the right type of equipment and also the right efficiency of equipment in order to enhance those energy savings for a project. And then thirdly, to complement the first two is considering how to appropriately apply renewables to the project in order to reduce on-site the carbon emissions during operation. So when we look through a project by these steps, then we can find solutions that are not going to increase the construction cost too much and also bring the best results in terms of a green building project. Next slide, please. In terms of more technical tools, then I think energy simulation is a great tool that we have available. And in Vietnam, we have quite a few professionals now that are using this in the green building consulting sector. So software-based energy simulation allows us to, at the design stage, to predict the energy consumption of the project. And it can do this quite accurately as long as inputs are reasonably known. So by using this software, we can compare different options at a very early stage in design and get quite a good indication of which options, which types of energy efficiency strategy are going to give the best impact, and even compare the cost of these in order to optimize the results before construction even begins on a project. So I think this tool is very helpful for a project owner to understand before the building comes to be what the energy consumption is going to look like and what the operational energy is going to look like. The fourth tool is software-based whole building lifecycle analysis. And this kind of ties into the materials and resources category that Ms. Hung mentioned in Lotus, but also can be awarded an innovation point as it's not in the Lotus tool yet. However, these tools are available for Vietnam, and we are seeing some consultants start to use them, and we are starting to use it in our consulting as well. So with quite comprehensive global databases of materials and a software system, we are able to estimate and compare options for different structural strategies and material strategies for projects, which take into account the carbon at each stage of the life cycle of the material, but also of the building as well. So this is something that's starting to gain traction in other countries around the world. And I think in Vietnam, as we improve our energy efficiency, we'll start to look more at whole building life cycle through software such as these. Yeah, next slide, please. And in fact, there's one software called One-Click LCA, which has a software called Planetary, and VGBC is actually partnering with Planetary, and One-Click LCA has offered this tool, which is like a basic embodied carbon assessment tool, and it's free for use. So I think you can find it from the One-Click LCA platform or even from the VGBC website. So we can see that we're starting to move towards looking at embodied carbon even in Vietnam. Next slide, please. So I wanted to share kind of like a practical example of how, in applying Lotus, we can work towards decarbonizing and net zero in projects in Vietnam. So this project is a 25-story office building in Lac Sơn that we designed and also did sustainability consulting for, along with the Vietnam Institute of Architects. And we won this competition for this project, and we are waiting for the next stage of the project to actually implement this design in Lac Sơn in Vietnam. Yeah, next slide, please. So we used Lotus at this early design stage during concept in order to address the client's brief, which was quite an interesting brief for this project. The brief was that they wanted a building to last for 100 years, and sustainability was a key part of that request in the brief as well. So in using Lotus and looking at how much energy we can save, we could look at if this building was to run full capacity, business as usual now for 100 years, it would save quite a significant amount of energy, quite a significant amount of money, and obviously a lot of carbon as well. So I think when we think about the buildings that we are building today and thinking about their lifespan, I think it starts to make a lot of sense to really look towards the future, considering that, for example, at COP26, we are setting goals for 2030. If we start designing a building today, it will still be a relatively new building in 2030. So the buildings that we're designing today, we hope to use for many years to come. So I think this is really important consideration for all buildings. Next slide, please. The site that we had for this project is a long, narrow site facing a river, and the orientation is probably one of the worst orientations we could have for starting off on a building project, especially in terms of green building. So north is straight up for this project, and once you apply the setbacks that are required for this site and the construction area and applying the GFA, there's not much room to move in terms of the building shape. So when we looked at the OTTV credit in Lotus, we had a look at if we just made a basic volume for the building, what would be the overall thermal transfer for different options, and we tried to adjust them and check the Lotus result to see what would be the best footprint and volume for the building. So as you can see, if we just did a straight block building facing east-west, the OTTV there's actually a 23% increase above the baseline. As we started to twist the building a little bit, we could improve. And by trying to avoid direct east-west facing facades, we were able to reduce the thermal transfer, the heat gain from direct solar radiation, by 7%, according to Lotus, before applying shading. So that was the first step for this project. Next slide, please. Next, we look at the shading strategy, also based on Lotus OTTV methodology. And we could see that by applying shading on northwest to northeast or southeast, southwest facing facades, we could reduce solar radiation by quite a lot. So then what we did was, next slide, please, is we looked at the changing orientation of facades, and we adjusted the strategy based on the orientation of each facade. So where a facade was facing directly east-west, you can see in the top right diagram, we flipped the louvers vertically to make like a screen to screen the direct solar radiation and reduce the thermal transfer. And then for all other orientations, we made the louvers horizontal so that we could maximize the views, but also benefit from the effective shading on these orientations. So in applying this, we were able to improve the OTTV reduction result in Lotus, which is an indication of the reduction of the solar heat gain, the direct solar radiation, by 48%, which is the maximum point in that credit for Lotus. Next slide, please. So you can see that this process also influenced the whole design of the facade and the concept for this project. And I think that was one of the exciting things for us in applying passive design to this project. We also looked at the efficiency of equipment, and in combination with the passive design, we're looking at a 45% reduction in energy consumption for this building and getting 28 points in the energy category for Lotus. We estimate that the project will use 105 kilowatt hours per meter squared for its energy use intensity. And all of this, we are trying to use low-tech solutions first and not use too many high-tech solutions in order to save on the investment cost. Yeah, next slide, please. So we also looked at renewable energy after this, and looked at how much renewable energy we can provide from the rooftop, based on quite a significant solar array for this 25-story building. We estimate that we can generate about 2.8% of the total energy consumption of the building from solar panels on the roof. So while this is not so much in Lotus, we can still get some points for this. And I think it's quite typical of high-rise buildings where it's difficult to get a lot of on-site energy. Next slide, please. We also considering using the design which has this archway, and this archway is oriented towards the southeast summer winds and northwest winter winds, using this space to include some wind turbines to generate some wind power. This may also only provide a very small amount of energy, but over the lifetime of the building will be significant. Next slide, please. This building is not able to achieve net zero by on-site renewable generation. But at the beginning of this year, we also wanted to look at theoretically, what would be possible for a net zero building in Vietnam. And we've been wanting to see if anybody is interested in doing a net zero project. So we put together some diagrams for this, and looking at our existing projects, we made some estimates about net zero. So next slide, please. Obviously, for a high-rise building, then it's quite difficult to achieve net zero with on-site renewables. But if we can get very highly energy efficient buildings and up to about 4 stories, we think that in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City, by applying solar panels to the roof and covering some of the walls, we can get quite a high level of renewable energy generation, and theoretically it's possible to get net zero buildings. And actually we have one project in the south which is anticipated to become a net zero building. It hasn't started construction yet, but it's a 2-story building. Yeah, so we hope to see some projects that can demonstrate that net zero is possible in Vietnam in the near future. Next slide, please. I think we don't have too much time, but I did want to touch on embodied energy challenges in Vietnam. As you can see, the structural systems for buildings, slabs and roof in yellow here, and the foundation system contribute a significant amount of the embodied energy in a building. And in Vietnam, as in many countries, reinforced concrete is one of the biggest contributors to this. So we want to look at, I think in Vietnam, we need to look at more options for materials and structural systems in order to decarbonize the embodied carbon, to look at the embodied carbon of our projects. Next slide. So it's quite difficult to make significant changes to the structural systems. However, in Vietnam, there is one particular strategy which has been identified to reduce the embodied carbon for building projects, and that is by not using fired clay bricks, as Ms. Hang mentioned. So in one project in central Vietnam, it's actually a factory project, we looked at the impact of replacing red brick with concrete block, and the overall embodied carbon for this project was reduced by over 10% by just making this one material replacement. So there are opportunities to improve embodied carbon, even by simple material substitutions. But in order to make further reductions, we really need to look at structural systems including steel, reuse of structures, as Ms. Hang mentioned, like the Green One UN House, and even timber construction with sequestration, in order to really address the embodied carbon of projects. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I think, I think we're running out of time. So I just want to mention briefly that, yeah, concrete is one way that one part that Lotus addresses, and there are many ways through structural efficiency, but also replacement of certain parts of concrete where we can save quite a lot of the carbon due to concrete construction. Next slide. But I think the global movements in mass timber and cross-laminated timber, it could be quite interesting for our region. It may take a while to be built in Vietnam, but I've also learned that Vietnam actually manufactures some parts of the panel by using some industrial bamboo materials that can be integrated into these mass timber products. So we actually have some production in Vietnam of some of these materials, but we are yet to see projects in Vietnam that apply these new systems of construction which have the opportunity to decarbonize for our for the materials in our projects. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, thank you very much for your time, and yeah, I look forward to the upcoming discussion in case there's any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tim Middleton. And for our final speakers, last but not least, I introduce to you Ms. Mai Phương Luong, team lead a large local corporate South and CRE from HSBC Vietnam. Mai Phương Luong leads the large corporate segment in South Vietnam of HSBC and oversees the commercial real estate business of the bank with 15 years experiences in banking. She has been fundamental in building HSBC real estate footprint in Vietnam. Mai is passionate about supporting local corporates to grow sophisticatedly and assisting FDI companies to navigate locally. And now, Ms. Mai Phương Luong is here today to have a conversation with us about green finance. Please, Mai Phương Luong.
Thank you, Dựng, for your kind introduction, and good morning, everyone. My name is Mai Luong from HSBC Bank, and I would like to thank VGBC for this amazing chance for me to share with you about sustainability consideration in real estate lending. So you have heard from the other speakers about the technical aspects of the green framework and the certificates. Next probably would be the question for financing. And you may wonder about the benefits of the green loan. The question actually should instead be, what are the benefits of the green property from a financing perspective? Because green loan is just a derivative of a green property. And there are multiple benefits of the green property, but I will share with you from a lender's lens so that you understand how the banks is looking at a green proposition. So in HSBC, we as a lender assess a property from two main angles. First of all, whether or not the property has sufficient cash flow to ensure the debt servicing capability. And the second is the value of the property that can retain an enforcement so that the bank can recover its loan in a default scenario. The first main angle is from a cash flow perspective that is impacted by two main elements. First of all, the revenue. So according to JLL, 70% of Asia Pacific occupiers are willing to pay a rental premium to green buildings. And indeed, majorly have paid between 7 to 10% premium for those buildings. Green buildings are also associated with higher tenant satisfaction, which may lead to them having higher chance to relet the property at a lower cost. The second element is on the cost side. Sustainable property is at least 20% more resource efficient in general, which is a cost-saving element. And according to IFC, A payback period for sustainability upgrades are typically less than 1 year for new builds and between 1 and 10 years for retrofit. And then as Chị Hằng quoted from the research recently by under the project participate by MOC, it is 3.7 years in average, right? Which is actually much shorter compared to the life of the property, and the potential OPEX can be saved during its lifetime. You can imagine the building that team designed with 100 years of lifetime. You can imagine how much of OPEX that can be saved during that period of time. And the second main angle that the bank look at would be the value of the property, which is impacted by a couple of few elements, main elements. First one is the cap rate. So the green buildings in Hong Kong can lead to 50 basis point reduction in capitalization rate, according to Collier's. Second element is the brand value. So we have seen real example of green certified hotel in the US can ask for higher daily average rate. Third element is on the investor appetite. So these days, there are more fund managers are carrying out very clear ESG investment mandate. And 50% investor prioritize building with green certificates when they build or they consider to buy an asset, according to a report by JLL. And that is to the bank is actually a good news, because from a security enforcement perspective, we know that there are keen buyers out there who is willing to look at the green properties that we are holding in our portfolio. So one may think that the data points that I quoted just now are just from a more advanced markets. But in Vietnam, with the increased presence of international funds manager, foreign investor, multinational corporate tenants, and so on, we believe that the market are moving toward that trend, and companies are pursuing green transition, not only because it's something good for the earth, for the good cause, or it is trendy, but also it is something good for their financial performance and future-proof their investment. So the green features do not guarantee a decision to lend of a lender to provide a loan, right? But it ticks very important boxes. Scientifically, the green property would likely uphold the real estate cycle, and its financial performance is subject to less volatility. So for example, a research showed that green buildings carry a 34% lower default risk compared to a non-green building, as a result of a more favorable loan-to-value ratio, where the valuation enjoy a green premiums. And because of the green building carry lower default risks, we as a lender, as a risk taker, are more keen to lend for this type of properties, and probably would be more willing to provide a better financing terms for those property compared to a non-green asset. So to HSBC particularly, we have pledged to provide between 750 billion US dollar to 1 trillion of US dollar of financing and investment until 2030 to support net zero transition. So if everything is at par, we will definitely prioritize a green property. Although the credit assessment will still have to happen as usual, but I can assure you that the goodwill of the bank is there if it is a green asset. If you don't mind, flip on to 2-3 slides ahead. So next one, please. Next one. Yeah, so you may wonder if everything I mentioned just now is just about, the credit assessment, the lending appetite, are just HSBC stand, and how the international market view about sustainable financing, which is the financing of sustainable asset, basically. So this slide is about the green, social, and sustainability bond market in 2021 year to date. And the data was collected in April this year, and we can see clearly a ramp up in sustainable finance, with the volume of the bond issuance in April 2021 increased from 131 billion in the same period last year to 321 billion US dollar of this year year to date. And in the third row of the bar chart, you can see that the progress started picking up aggressively since 2019, 2020, as the world get closer to COP26 in 2021. And we believe that it will be the trend going onwards because it's increasingly demanded by regulators, by investors, shareholders, financials, clients for more ESG financing. Next slide, please. Now, if you have somewhat been convinced with the green investment, here's the menu of the green products that HSBC can help. They are different, depend on which part of the value chain or which part of the green journey you are, and your ESG targets that you can select different products. So for example, if you are a developer who are new to sustainable finance, it is the first green building that you develop, for example, green loan may be the most suitable product for financing raised at the project level. But if you possess a portfolio of green assets and are more advanced in ESG strategy, green bonds may be the one. Or if you have a portfolio of mixed, green, brown assets and you aim for a transition to a lower carbon emission and you expect the bank to support you with that transition period, then sustainability-linked loans or sustainability-linked bond may be suitable for you. Look from a different angle. If you are a fund manager who have been able to raise substantial funds that are awaiting investment opportunities into green projects, but it may take time to construct those projects, for example, short-term green deposit may help you to comply with your ESG investment mandate. Or if you are a contractor to a green project, you may find green trade finance or sustainable supply chain solution relevant, where we can help you to issue green performance guarantee or green supplier finance. So put it very simple, any products that you can expect to get from HSBC, we can always plug in an ESG element to it if the underlying asset or the underlying investment are green. Next slide, please. Okay, so if you feel a bit lost with all of these financing products, I probably will walk you through now briefly with two main financing product streams. The first one is the green loan and green bond, and the second one is sustainability-linked loan and sustainability-linked bonds. So green loans and green bond is actually a loan or a bond, but then can satisfy 4 pillars of green principles. And these are not the principles set out by HSBC, but by the Loan Market Association or the International Capital Market Association. Basically, these 3 pillars will be related to the use of proceeds. So the loan or the bond, we need to finance green project, and particularly in the context of real estate, green buildings. Pillar number 2, project evaluation and selection. Basically, you need to prove to the bank that your project is actually green. And it would be best if it can be certified by an organization like Lotus or other international organization who provide certificates on this front. Third point is on management of proceeds, just to ensure that the monies go where it's supposed to be. And this part is actually quite simple, as in Vietnam, banks are required by the regulations to control the use of funds to follow the agreed purpose anyway. And last pillar would be on the reporting. So the borrower should report to the bank on an ongoing basis until the fund is fully disbursed, that the use of proceeds was really come to green project. This point is again also quite easy point to achieve, because under a real estate loan, typically the lender would ask the borrower to supply with information reporting anyway, whether or not it is a green or a non-green financing. So these principles and related undertakings will be included in a green appendix of the loan agreement or the bond documents. Pretty simple. So, and you can consider the green financing for both new development and retrofit, just to echo to the point that the earlier speakers presented about the opportunity to go green lies in both the new development and retrofitting the existing buildings. So in Vietnam, we believe that there's enormous opportunity to retrofit the old buildings to bring the green features to improve the performance of those buildings. Next slide, please. So sustainability-linked loan and sustainability-linked bond, or SLL, SLB, are actually much more versatile products which incentivize borrowers to achieve ambitious, predetermined sustainable performance targets, or SPTs in short, by linking the borrower cost of capital with its ESG or sustainability metrics. These type of products generally are pursued by borrowers being more advanced in the ESG journey, and generally they would have had an ESG strategy in place and look for the bank to help improve those ESG performance via financing and incentive. The logic is pretty simple. The borrower agree with the banks on some ESG SPT, and if they achieve such targets, the bank will award them with some economics benefits or penalties if otherwise. So similar to a loan or green bond, the SLL is required to follow certain pillars of principles set out by the Loan Market Association or the International Capital Market Association. So I'm cautious of time, so I probably will jump over a couple of slides to the slide on the certificate. So Dũng, trouble you to jump over 1-2 slide. Next one, please. Next one. Okay, so this slide is about some popular green certificates in Asia Pacific. And I must clarify that the list of acceptable certificate to HSBC is not exhaustive, and we are open to local certificates like Lotus, provided that is satisfied with the international standards to ensure that we are really driving a material change toward net zero. And for the same reason, HSBC typically would accept the top 2 classification of those certificates. So for example, for the LEED or for Lotus, it would be platinum or gold. That we only accept. The couple following slide, next slide, please. For example, this one is a potential key performance indicators for real estate client. So it is actually some of the key KPIs related to sustainability linked loan or linked bond. So you can see there's a suggested potential KPI set. Here, for example, like, average rating of a green building portfolio or the total renewable energy capacity installed, annual reduction of energy consumption or annual saving of the water and so on. Next slide, please. GRESB, so it's actually the database. So GRESB is an international organization who provide the data and benchmark for companies to compare their performance in the ESG front with their peers. So if your company or the project that you have international investor, that'd be very likely that you will receive their questions on the ESG performance of the property, which actually pretty much align with this GRESB database and benchmark. Can you just jump over a couple of slides? Jump to the case study slide, please. Next one, please. Next one. Yep. Next. Next one. Okay, so I'm cautious of time, hence I would like to just touch upon on the 2 case studies that we have done recently. So most notably, recently we have assisted Vinpearl to issue 425 million of exchangeable sustainable bond, offering by Vinpearl into the shares of Vingroup. So HSBC was a sole sustainability structuring bank, and we worked closely with Vingroup in developing its sustainable finance framework that received a positive second-party opinion from Sustainalytics. And that is actually the first global exchangeable sustainable bond, and a very key milestone for Asian corporates in demonstrating the commitment to sustainable financing. So if you wonder any kind of first global sustainable finance can happen in Vietnam, here's one of those, and HSBC is keen to bring more of the first sustainability finance transaction to Vietnam similar to this one. Next slide, please. The other transaction, which we are currently at the closing stage, is a US $200 million refinancing of a LEED Gold certificate commercial building. And the transaction is actually part of a Vietnamese client plan to include more quality properties into its portfolio of investment. And that is the first green loan transaction of the client, The transaction opens up a new funding channel to the client and reflects HSBC's strategy to onboard and support like-minded customers. So with that, I'm ending my presentations here, and I'm now handing over back to the MC and looking forward for the panel discussion. Thank you.
And before we go into the panel discussion, look on the screen. Yes, you can see on the screen here, you can see a small QR code. You can use your phone to scan it, or you can join at the website code game 945-035 to enter this little quiz. We will wait for about 1 minute so you guys can have time and enter the platform. Yes. In case you guys still have some trouble access the little quiz, I would like to repeat that you can either scan the QR code on the screen or join at the website to join the little quiz. We have now 5 people in this this game is very simple and it's only including like 10 questions. It's not that much possible. I can see here that we have 8 people already logged into the quiz. We will have another 30 minutes. So I think it's time for us to start the quiz. Yeah, so please start the quiz. First question. The first question is on the screen. You can read it on the screen and you can choose your answer on the website or on your app. Yes, we have 78% of people choosing resources in circularity, and surprisingly, the correct answer is A, D, and E, climate action resources in circularity and health and well-being. Congratulations to all of you that had the correct answer. And now the questions 2 will be. Yeah, you can look on the screen and answer it. Choose the right question. To the right answer. The most picked answer are government leadership with 82% of people choosing it, and it also a correct answer. A, B, and E. Yes. Question number 3, please. Hmm. 83% of people choosing 2, and luckily it is the correct answer. Congratulations to you all. And we'll move on to the question number 4. You can choose many options, and if you like, if you think it's true and it's right, then you can choose many options. You can. Ooh, 100% of people here choosing renewable energy. And surprisingly, they are all correct answer. Yes, congratulations to you all. And next question will be the question number 5. And B has the most picked, so yeah, and B is the correct answer, 40%. Congratulations to you all. Question number 6. You can select multiple options for this question. Hmm, 73% of people choosing C and D, and it is the correct answer. Congratulations to the 73% people choosing that. So next question, question number 7. Ten minutes left. So most of you have chose B, no poverty, and it is the correct answer. Congratulations. Move on to the next question. Question number 8. Fill in the blank. Only one answer is correct. A have the most picked, and it is the correct answer. Congratulations to 84% of people choosing A. Next question, question number 9. A has the most picked, and it is the correct answer too. So congratulations to this 43% of people choosing the option number A. And our last question, question number 10, please. the last question. You guys should get more points from this last question in order to win this game. And the correct answer will be D, none of the above. And we have 85% people choosing the correct answer. Congratulations to y'all. And the final result will be Mr. Tim Middleton comes first place. Congratulations. And Ms. Joy, number 2. 3 is Hannah. 4, Ròng. Number 5, and in the top 5 of this little quiz. Congratulations to you all. In the last sessions of the day is the panel discussion. So I will be the executive director of VGBC. He will be the moderator of the panel discussion. And we conduct general construction of buildings and real estate developer in Vietnam and overseas. Knowledgeable and experienced in project development and management, particularly from positioning stage through to operation, that gives Henry lots of exposures to sustainability in green buildings, fundamental to continuous improvement in corporate driving forces by leading CIP and BCP. Yes, so Mr. Henry will be the moderator for the panel discussion today. If you guys have any questions, you can raise hand or give it in the chat box. Mr. Henry.
Okay, thank you, Dũng, for your excellent job today, and Khánh behind the scene to help us run this webinar. So I'll be delighted to be your collaborator and moderator for this panel discussion. And I'd like to invite the speakers going to the floor for our panel discussion. Hằng Phan and Joy is the guy, Tim Middleton, Mai Leung from HSBC, and Mr. Kerry Chan. So please help me to welcome them to the panel discussion. Well, I understand that we are limited in time. It looks like we are a little bit behind the schedule, but I'd like to encourage all the audience here to stay with us for a while to complete the panel discussion, where you can have opportunity to raise the questions. We tried our best to address your questions as much as possible. However, we will consider the appropriate question to come first. So let me start the panel discussion. First of all, I will start with Joy Guy. Hello, Joy Guy.
Hi, Henry.
Hey, I'm thrilled to and believe everybody here in this webinar and the audience side feeling the same to know that the whole life carbon vision towards 2015 by WorldGBC. Now I understand that 2018 WorldGBC has launched the whole life carbon commitment in 2018 and received positive feedbacks and necessary support from the organization. And in addition, in September, WorldGBC published the enhanced commitment pathway, and they are requesting leading companies to commit on net zero for both operational and embodied carbon, having offset as the last resort. So could you tell to the audience and the panelists here about the request to commit to net zero? whether it is compulsory or voluntary to the companies, and if possible, who are they? Who are on the companies? Are they a part of the GBC network, or they are coming from different industry? So please.
Thank you, Henry, for posting this question and giving the opportunity for me to emphasize and also to share this initiative with everyone. So first of all, this is not a compulsory commitment, because only those companies who are positioned themselves as a leader, or they are taking advantage to take the extra miles to commit to the net zero, are usually coming in. So in order for them to take the commitment, first of all, we definitely encourage the organizations to work closely with the local Green Building Council, because the local Green Building Council will have the initiative, and also they are able to implement the government decision and approaches clearly with the projects. So in order for the organizations to come forward to be the front runner in the advancing of net zero, they will usually approach the local GBC, and they will link back directly with the net zero, advancing of net zero team in the World Green Building Council. So the process start from the commitment, and then after this, we will be going through the disclosure process, and then also to encourage the company to act accordingly and meet the requirements by the commitment date. Then we will also implement the verification stage to make sure that whatever has been committed are verified and measured. And definitely those leading companies will also be the advocate in the industry. Yeah, hope it clarifies. And then please go ahead to the World Green Building Council webpage to learn more from that. Thank you.
Okay, now what a nice answer and perfect answer. I'd like to ask more questions to follow up on your answers, but I have to cut short here. Well, with that, I'd like to turn to Mr. Kerry Chan. Mr. Kerry Chan, hello, Mr. Kerry Chan. The page you were telling is actually exciting me a lot, right? With two men and newspaper articles, one man working by the desk, by his desk with a laptop, and the other sleeping on his bed with a lot of anxiety and pressures and headaches. The image tells us that there are a lot of things to be concerned about, especially when it comes to climate change and resilience. Going back to the bold and ambitious strategies, sustainable buildings for everyone, everywhere. And if you have to call it out in a priority order, what are the 5 key areas that we are facing, and or you want to give the audience here the focus or the attention most at the Asia Pacific regional level?
Yes, thank you for the question. The first priority, of course, is to use the climate readiness framework to determine your priorities. That is the first thing. And since I've done that, I have identified 5 key areas. Now, first of all, as you can see from Joy's presentation, definition is important. If you do not have the definition, you don't know well what you should be doing. The second thing is life cycle carbon. Now, in Hong Kong, you can see the roadmap for carbon neutrality by the government. They do not include any embodied carbon in there. I asked them why. They said because it's a protocol of accounting. So the embodied carbon is the operational carbon of other countries. So therefore, I think for the industry in Hong Kong, at least, the industry is not aware of the life cycle carbon. So therefore, they need to really identify, well, this is really something that is in their scope. So I think that is the second priority. The third and fourth priority is really regarding the cost, the value of doing this. So therefore, there are different ways of doing that. One is the TCFD, the Task Force on Climate-Related Finance Disclosure. Now, what they're trying to to assess is the risk on transitional risk and also the physical risk. Well, I would say that the transitional risk are the risks that can wipe out your company, your business, and the physical risk is the risk that will wipe out your building. So that is the physical risk. And well, what I say is important is that it works out the cost of no action. So that is very important. So that means it can indirectly give you the value for the additional works that you will be doing in catering for climate change. The other one is creating share value. Most of the companies in Hong Kong organizations, they are doing it just for CSR, public social responsibility, and it's not workable in a longer term. It has to be integrated with their business. So therefore, this is what it's all about: is creating shared value. So that is, make it as part of your business. You can make money out of it. So that is another way of creating a value of climate readiness. And of course, energy efficiency is also very important. So these are really my thoughts on the priorities. Thank you.
Great, Kerry Chan, for your perfect answer. I'm thrilled to know that these are the 5 key areas that we have to get attention to. And like I said, I'd like to cut short the panel discussion. Right now, I see a lot of questions from the audience. They are very interested in knowing from one of the suppliers in the construction materials. Would like to ask, okay, I will read the questions. I understand that the building material is emission CO2 11% for the materials, construction material, in terms of greenhouse gas emission CO2. As a manufacturer of roofing and siding material, what I can do to reduce emission CO2 on green building? Well, this is a closer question, and the content is closer to Ms. Hang's presentation in terms of the embodied carbon and the upfront carbon that is related to the manufacturing process. And I'd like to invite Ms. Hang for discussing or answering these questions from our audience. Are you okay?
Thank you for the questions. It's very interesting questions, and I'm glad that today we discussed the last mentioned topic, which is embodied carbon. I agree with Mr. Kerry Chan that the government today, they focus a lot more on operational carbon, while embodied carbon is somehow lag behind. And if we want to really achieve our decarbonization target, we need to address both parts. So back to your question regarding how to reduce the carbon emission from the material. First thing, as the principle of the framework, it is about data transparency and disclosure. So I would suggest that you start with the LCA analysis, life cycle analysis of your material, to see what are the most contribution of energy and carbon throughout the life cycle of your material. And like I mentioned in my presentation, there are several strategies you can apply. Firstly, look at the technologies, manufacturing techniques, optimization of the manufacturing process to reduce the energy emission or energy consumption loss during the process. That is the first thing you can do. It is about energy efficiency of your entire product line. product manufacturing process. And secondly, you can move to electrification. The three principles, the three group of action is not only applied for the operational carbon, it is also applied for the embodied carbon, which means the building material manufacturing process. So energy efficiency first. Look at where the losses throughout the manufacturing process and optimize the usage of energy through the process, cut the losses. Secondly, like I say, electrification, and for the material part of it, look at the possibility to reduce the virgin material, you recycle resources or the renewable resources for your input material, because doing so, we can reduce the embodied carbon, not just address the circularity topic, but also reducing the embodied carbon. And of course, next is to seek for the renewable energy supply for the production. So you can apply all three key actions that I have mentioned, because these are applied for the whole life cycle of a building, not just operational carbon. So I hope I have answered your questions. Thank you.
Okay, great, Ms. Hằng, thank you very much. I hope your answer will help the audience questions. And if the audience is still having a more clarification question, we are happy to take you offline, and we'll be happy to be in discussing about your concern about how to reduce the CO emission in the manufacturing process. Okay, since we are here and talking about the whole life circle approach to decarbonize the building sector, as described clearly in a circle of Ms. Hằng, starting from the exploiting natural resources being put into the manufacturing process. So we have embodied carbon to produce products and construction materials being input in the construction process. Then so we have the upfront carbon and to build assets and infrastructures, energy used for assets. So we have operational carbon. So every kind of carbon is relating to the project circle, project stages. And so it goes clockwise until the end of life carbon and beyond the life carbon. And I also can see the equation of the whole life carbon is the whole life carbon equals to the operational carbons plus the embodied carbon, in which the operational carbon occupies for 75% of the whole life carbons. So my question would probably be addressed to Ms. Hằng. With the whole life circle approach, what do you think Vietnam should do towards the achieving the net zero carbon in building sector? And that is relating to some of the decrees and government regulation, as you also presented before. So Ms. Hằng, please.
Thank you. It's quite a difficult question because as I mentioned from the beginning, this whole life cycle approach in building sector to decarbonize carbon emission of our sector, it needs a holistic approach throughout the value chain in construction sector. And then the net zero carbon framework address excellently the 5 key topics. And first, we see the role of government with the regulation, benchmark, enforcements are crucial. So it set the game, it set the playground for every stakeholder to take up. And we already have the framework like I shared, and I hope that the government in the future, they will enforce this further. And we are already seeing the movement from the government, the Ministry of Construction, toward this direction. So we are hopeful that there will be more to come in the future from the government activities. And secondly, the mindset is very important. From the result of the energy efficiency project that funded by the UNDP for the MOC, we see that the architect and developer, they are not really see the benefits of getting involved into the energy efficiency process. And if we can address that, if they can change the mindset to see the benefit and to have a holistic approach, not just maximizing the profit, but also see it, okay, of course, it is a profit for them because as they mentioned, the payback time is only 3.7 years in average. So it is a great financial gain for them. But also we aim to have a better place for people and community. So if we can help to generate the mindset change in the, how the stakeholder value chains, then we can together win this game. No one person, no one single party can do that. It is the collaborative work.
Exactly. And I which I agree absolutely. And I would like to hear different views. If Tim can help and jump in to give your different perspective on the same questions to articulate on the equation of the carbon emission. Could you please, Tim, to provide some more insights on the operational carbon and embodied carbon?
Yes, I think what I've been thinking about, what Vietnam needs right now in order to address this issue is a more rapid uptake of green building. And yeah, as Ms. Hang said, for people to see the benefit of green building beyond just CSR, as Mr. Carey also mentioned, have the same issue in Hong Kong as well. But to see that this is the future of building. We're going to be doubling GFA globally by 2050, but I think the rate is even faster in Vietnam. So I think we're going to miss an opportunity in this rapid period of growth. Ms. Hang mentioned the rapid growth of renewables from 2017 to 2019 in Vietnam. Why can't we have the same for green building? And if we can get to that level, then I think we can start talking more about net zero and move the bar forward. And I think part of it is more green building, but also part of it is enforcement of the energy efficiency code. So to make sure the bottom of the market is also meeting a minimum standard for energy efficiency. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Tim, for providing a different perspective and consensus on Ms. Hang's ideas. Well,
excuse me, Henry. I saw a question that maybe Tim can help to answer, which is about.
I know that. I know Mr. Nang, right? Mr. Trần Quý Nang is giving the question. There are a lot of questions from the audience side, which is good for us. But I will have to close this webinar in 7 minutes more. There are 2 questions for HSBC, one of which I think we can offline to discuss about that. That is, I can read the audience question. Will HSBC accept BIM Plus of Hong Kong? So this will be an offline discussion. And I
can answer straight away. Yes, we do.
Yeah, appreciate that straight answers, and we are delighted to preserve the second question for HSBC next time or offline. The audience can connect with me, and I will provide a coordination and connect thing to you to the HSBC Miss Mai Leung here for answer. So with that, I will turn to the last question before I close this webinar. Lotus, I'd like to read this question from Mr. Trần Quý Nang, and then I put it here. And I think for technical wise, Lotus is a very good green building rating tool, but most of the buildings in Vietnam are not able to get Lotus certification. I have a question. If VGBC intend to develop additional green certification products with less demand and focus in fewer categories as the existing Lotus, like IFC with H, I believe he wrote Lech, but I think H. More buildings getting green certification would contribute to the net zero carbon. So the question will be addressed by Tim. Tim, are you willing to address this?
Yes, it's a very good question, and it's something that at the VGBC we've talked a lot about. So I guess the core part of the question is that is Lotus too difficult for mass adoption in Vietnam, and is that delaying the adoption of Lotus and therefore decarbonization? I think we need to differentiate between some other tools which have a place in the market, such as Edge, because Lotus is a holistic tool. So as I mentioned, we're not just looking at reducing resource consumption. We're looking at indoor environmental quality and effects on the environment and other things like that. And I think that Lotus needs to keep that focus of the holistic green certification. But at the same time, Lotus has been simplifying a little bit over the years. In the beginning, when I was working on tool development, we wanted to ensure that it was very, very rigorous and that nothing fell through the gaps. And I think that's relaxing a little bit because other green building tools seem to be doing the same thing. Like LEED has some similar movement where it tries to make it less complicated. So I think definitely we can continue to look at making Lotus less complicated, but as you say, I think it's a good tool. And I think there are other factors at play as to why it's not being adopted yet. And I think if green building becomes more normal, then the effort for Lotus or even LEED or other green building rating tools will not be such an issue in Vietnam anymore if it's adopted more and becomes more mainstream. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Tim, you have something to add? No?
Yeah, I want to emphasize. I totally agree with Tim's comment. Yeah, for the past few years, the market is not very attentive to the green building standard in general, but I hope with this new commitment from our Prime Minister to net zero carbon, there will be a new surge in the demand in the market. And to emphasize on the differences of a different green scheme here, the green and sustainable building, we targeted three focal points: the environmental impact, and so the financial benefit, and the benefit for occupants and community health and well-being in particular. So it's not only about reduction of energy efficiency or material, but it also to provide the social benefit for people around the buildings. And Lotus address all these key elements. So that is the difference. And of course, we are working on simplify as much as possible, but we want to maintain the core elements of the approach of the Lotus scheme. And hopefully in the future, where we talk about the mindset change, if the architect and developer throughout the value chain, they see the benefit of having a holistic approach, that not only being good people, doing good thing for the environment, but also the financial benefit, then they will we will have more green projects in the future. So we really do hope so.
Okay, looks like we are running out of time, so I have to thank you, Ms. Hằng, for your providing another perspective in terms of developing the Lotus rating system, additional to the existing one, make it a simplified, streamlined. Obviously, we have to look at that as our continuous improvement plan for the products. So with that, it is our honor and pleasure to have you here and the distinguished guests and the audience, including our Lotus AB attending this wonderful webinar. I'm thrilled to see both the speakers and the audience discussing interesting topics about the net zero carbon, whole life circle carbon, real case studies share, governmental regulation on environment and energy efficiency share regionally from Vietnam through to Hong Kong and Singapore. Your participation and involvement encourage us to continue our mission, being a member of WorldGBC to align with global strategy to foster knowledge in construction industry about sustainable buildings and adapting to climate change, to encourage green building practice through promoting Lotus and the accreditation system of choice in Vietnam. And this is just one event in our series of 4 on the same topic with different viewpoints and content. There will be 3 upcoming events in 2022, which respectively occur in March, June, and August. Next year, we will keep you informed of specific dates and time for those seminars. Meanwhile, you can check it out on our website at www.vgbc.vn. And the Christmas season is around the corner, and I can feel the cool air and the Santa Claus is coming closer to us, and the holidays mood is around. And this webinar is held in that situation. Isn't it a fantastic and a full of blessing for us? Well, on behalf of VGBC and partners and supporters, I'd like to thank you very much for your attending, and we hope you will take the key message away with you about the net zero carbon readiness framework. Finally, I also thank our sponsors of the event, Fraser Property, Saint-Gobain, and Phúc Khang real estate developer. They are really helpful and generous to consistently support our social missions. It demonstrates their social responsibility and a commitment to tackle the climate change and reduce the carbon footprints. And with that, I declare closing this webinar today. And thank you very much again for the panelists and all the audience and distinguished guests.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Henry. It's a wonderful presentation. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much.
Early Christmas, everyone.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
Have a nice weekend to you all.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Have a nice weekend. Okay, thank you very much, all the audience.
Wonderful job. Thank you, Henry.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.